Welcome to Beyond Time Signatures. So today with us we have KEYAN HOUSHMAND from Australia. Welcome to the podcast, KEYAN.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. Not a lot of people do that.
Of course,
No, it's
man. I
awesome
mean,
to be
I'm
here, man.
Indian. I can pronounce the R's and the D's with the perfect accentuation, so you don't have to
Yeah,
worry about that.
nice, nice. To be fair, I think like it's slightly my parents' fault for not spelling it correctly. I feel like it should be KIYAN. I feel like that's like the correct spelling, but for whatever reason, I got stuck with an E, so I get a lot of Keyans.
Yeah,
Um, but
because there's no tuning called drop I. There's a drop E. So.
yeah, exactly right, exactly right. But yeah, no, this is awesome, dude. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's pleasure to have you, man. I mean, I've been a follower of yours for a long time, and it's just awesome to see where you are right now. And so I'd love to know about what was your first known memory with music and your first known memory with guitar.
That's a great question. So, first known memory with music. I guess like I've been into music my whole life. Like my parents aren't really that musical. They don't play instruments, but a lot of people on both sides in the families, like whether it's like relatives, uncles, aunties, cousins, whatever, like play instruments. Um, whether that be in Australia or like abroad or whatever, like it's music has been like a big part of both sides of the family. So I was like always pretty into music. Even as like, I'd say like my earliest memory is probably just like dancing to Michael Jackson when I was like 3 years old or something like that. Do you know
Nice,
what I mean? Like
nice.
stuff like that. Like I was always, I really liked Michael Jackson. I would like dress up like Michael Jackson and try dance like Michael Jackson. And yeah, no, that was definitely, those are like definitely the earliest memories. But in regards to guitar, I got given a guitar for my fifth birthday that would have been
Dude,
2004.
yeah, dude, wild.
Yeah, so like my uncle gave me a guitar, and it was just like one of those like really cheap nylon acoustic guitars. And it was never one of the, because like like when some people like make assumptions like when you're that young, you're kind of like forced by your parents to play. It was never like that, to be honest. Like I was never forced to do anything that I didn't want to do musically. It was kind of just like my uncle bought me a guitar for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe he just saw that I was interested in music and just thought getting me a guitar would be a cool idea. And then my parents probably were just kind of like, oh well, like I guess we'll get him lessons now. Do you know what I mean? And then from then there was never really a point where I was like, oh, I'm going to put the guitar down and not care about it anymore. And it wasn't like someone was like on my back telling me I had to learn it. I just kind of liked learning it. And then 20 years later, I'm still trying to figure it out. So, yeah, my earliest memory with guitar, I mean, like obviously I remember like being a kid and doing lessons and stuff like that, but that stuff's boring. Like I'm trying to remember like a cool memory from when I was younger. I
Could be
mean,
one of the songs you listened to and was like, "Oh, let me try this out on guitar." Something like that.
yeah, I mean, I remember like one of the first ever like licks or like riffs that I learned on a guitar, on an electric guitar, apart from like like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Green Sleeves and all that stuff, was a song called Joker and the Thief by Wolf Mother. And it has this little intro riff, and it's like da 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 da. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever at the time when it came out, because that song would have came out like around that time, around like 2004, 2005 ish, I want to say. So um, hearing that on the radio, hearing that like in the background of like AFL or like footy, like Australian rules football ads and stuff like that. I really liked that song, and I brought it to my guitar teacher. And like I think that might have been the first time that I learned what a power chord was. And that's just what
Okay.
started the downfall of whatever it's turned into now.
Yeah, I'm glad to have witnessed your downfall, man. That
Yeah, no, that
that's
that
cool,
was
dude.
like, yeah, first introduction to power chords, and then from there it was just a lot of Fall Out Boy and Paramore and All American Rejects and all that stuff. So I think
Nice.
that's definitely where it started from. Yeah.
That's cool. And what was your introduction to, like, metalcore or maybe gent?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess it kind of like stemmed from that. So like, Fall Out Boy, and then like some Fall Out Boy songs like had screaming in it. I know it's pop punk, but like whatever. Um, and that would be like stuff deeper in the catalog that I would listen to and be like, oh, that's interesting or whatever. And I remember actually like hating metal at the start. Like I didn't like screams, I didn't like anything. Um, but I don't know. I feel like there was like that's when I was like 12. I think I just didn't like it because I didn't understand it. I was like, what is this? Do you know what I mean? And then obviously there was probably people around me like who are older and a bit more boomery saying like, oh, this isn't music. Do you know what I mean? So I probably just like took on their perspective a little bit. But then I don't know, like there was like a shift, and stuff like Guitar Hero 3 especially was like a
Okay.
big kind of like, I feel like those types of games like Guitar Hero and like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Burnout, like those were all games that I played as a kid that had all these like harder styles of music in them, where it kind of just like it made it much easier to gravitate to later on, where I was already like, well, there's a word that I'm looking for, I can't think of. I was like exposed to that already, where I was like, oh, this isn't that foreign. Like I've heard a song that has distorted guitars and has like screams and stuff in it in these games, and now I hear it and I was like, oh yeah, I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So uh, I want to say like one of the first introductions to metal is probably somewhere between uh, probably Killswitch Engage, I want to say, because like that
Okay.
was Guitar Hero 3. My Curse was on that game, but it was like the cleaner version of My Curse. And then when I actually looked it up on YouTube, um, it was like a different version. It was the actual album version that had the screams and the verses and stuff. But nevertheless, I still liked it. And then that kind of spiraled into like, I specifically remember uh, going on YouTube and finding Waking the Demon by Bullet for My
Bullet
Valentine.
from a Valentine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember finding that, and I remember like looking behind my shoulder in my room and like turning the speakers really low to listen to it because I didn't want anyone to like hear that I was listening to Bullet for My Valentine, and like watch the film clip and all that stuff. But I remember being really drawn into that. But I think it was more so the guitar work that I thought was like really cool. Like, and now like that I have I can go back and like, really think about it and psychoanalyze it. I think no matter if it was like Killswitch or Slipknot or Bullet for My Valentine or like all these like, uh, like foundation bands that got me into metal, I think the one thing that was unanimous with all of them was that sense of like melody and like
Yes.
melodicness,
Yes.
and how that translated to guitar specifically, and how fun it was to play and how cool it sounded on guitar, and like the riffs and all that stuff, which is why those bands, like my favorite songs from those bands are like the most melodic ones, like
Melodic.
Waking the
Yeah.
Demon, or
Forever and
uh
always.
yeah, yeah,
There's another
like
one. Yeah.
hearts something
Burst into
hearts.
fire. Yeah.
That one, yeah. Um, that one. All the
Tears don't
Killswitch
fall.
songs. Yeah, Tears Don't Fall as well. Uh, I'm just thinking of Killswitch songs. There's a Killswitch song called "Save Me" from
Yeah.
2009. That one's really cool. "Reject Yourself," probably like the
Yourself.
most
Yeah.
melodic song on that whole record. So like all those songs and how they, because I would then learn and be like, oh, this is super fun to play and sounds super cool. So I think that's where that came from. But yeah, a lot of that like first taste of metal came from bands like that for sure.
Dude, that's so awesome to hear, because I think Adam D has laid the foundation for like the 5150 sound. Like it's him.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
He's a great producer as well, and he produced a lot of bands while doing Killswitch Engage stuff. So yeah, I'm not surprised as to why it's been so prominent since then.
I Yeah, that's true. That's awesome to hear, man. And I assume like you got into prog through Monuments, Tesseract, Periphery, and Animals as Leaders.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't mention the prog stuff. So prog's funny because my friend, who I'm still like best friends with to this day, his name's Henry. He showed me. This would have been like year 9 or year 10. Um, it's funny because I'll explain how we met because it's a funny story. So the first day of high school, we were in art class, and there was like all these kids that you've never really seen them before. A lot of my friends, who I'm still again friends with to this day, who went to my primary school, went to the same high school, and a lot of us were in the same art class, but everyone else we didn't really know. And there was this guy sitting next to me, and he was just as tall as like in grade 8 as he was now. He was like 6'3", had a big afro, like he was like a very big boy and very scary when you're like 12, 13 years old, right? Um, and in that art class, we had to do like clay mask things. Like we had to, over the whole term, the project was you had to make a clay mask. And I was like getting into Slipknot at the time, like just starting. So I was like, oh, I'm
Nice.
just going to like rip off a Slipknot mask and just like pretend I did it. Do you know what I mean? Or like have something like very heavily inspired. And then the person sitting next to me, who is now my friend Henry, goes, oh, is that like kind of from Slipknot? And I was like, yeah, it is. And then we started talking because I'd never met someone before that listens to the same music as I do. And every band that we've just been talking about, he was into, he was listening to. And I was like, oh, this is like really weird. The next class, we had music. And at the time, I had a Gibson Les Paul Studio. It was white. It was Alpine white with a black pick guard, and I had gold hardware on it. And I had it in like the Gibson case, with like the fluffy inside, and it smells like cherry, like the classic Gibson case. And that was my present for like my parents got it for me as a present because I got the scholarship for music to go to that school. And I thought it was like the coolest guitar in the class, whatever. I go to the storage room, and there's a Gibson case there that looks exactly like mine. That isn't mine because I could tell it wasn't mine, but it looked exactly the same. I was like, strange. And then I see this Henry guy come and pick up that case. I'm like, oh, that's weird. We got the same like brand of guitar. And we go into the class and we open up our cases, and I kid you not, it's the exact same guitar. Alpine
No way.
white, black pick guard, gold hardware. And we kind of just looked at each other like, what's going on? So we had the exact same guitar as well. So yeah, and to this day we're still very, very good friends. So some would say that it's meant to be, but I thought I'd like immortalize that story by telling it on a podcast because it's a very fun story. But so met Henry that day, and then we obviously still friends to this day. So around like year 9 or year 10, he showed me a cover on YouTube of Ryan Sue playing Make Total Destroy. And this is back when Ryan Sue was probably like, he was only like 1 or 2 years older than us. So you probably would have been like 14, 15 or something. Or maybe even 13. I'm not sure. He was young. He was very young. He was a teenager, just like us. And, we were just watching this like little kid from Sydney who was like playing this like music. And my friend showed it to me. And he's like, how cool is this song? And I hated it. I actually hated like Periphery. I couldn't do it because, again, like I didn't understand it. Like, why is the rhythm so choppy? Like, it's not standard. Like I didn't understand what like syncopation and what carrying over the bar and what odd time signatures were, anything like that. Like I got it, but like I didn't like it, and it didn't gel with me at that point. And that was my first introduction to Periphery. And then maybe like 6 months, 12 months later, my friend showed me another one, and he's like, dude, you gotta like this. It's Prayer Position. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he showed me another cover of, it was like a dual guitar cover of these two guys playing Prayer Position. I know what the video looks like. It's Eric and Trey or something like that. And they did a Prayer Position cover, and immediately I fell in love with the song because
Yeah,
it was a bit
I
more
guess
like,
because it's in 6/8 and it's groovy.
yeah. It was like a bit more easier to digest, and like the riffs were techy and melodic and interesting, just like all those Kill Switch riffs that I liked, were just like Bullet was and all that stuff. I was like, okay, I can get around this. And like, even though I had that one weird bit in the pre-chorus with like the like at that point, I remember trying to listen to that. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, how is this working? But eventually from there, I was like, well, I got to listen to other Periphery stuff, and then just I don't know what happened, but it just like
Game
spilled
changer.
in, spilled into Monuments, spilled into not so much Tesseract, to be honest. I got into Tesseract a little bit later, but Monuments was definitely a huge one. Periphery, Meshuggah a little later on, Vela Maya, like Polaris, especially because Polaris, especially their older stuff. And then, finding out that Ryan was in a band called Polaris, I was like, oh, cool, this guy like is in a band. And like that was when like Guilt and Grief was out. That was like when the Mortal Coil was like not even out yet. So like a lot of the Polaris stuff was still very like progressive metalcore, for lack of a better expression,
Yeah.
or periphery core, some people like to call it. But I have a really soft spot for those types of records, in that kind of like, mid to late 2010s era of like modern metal or gent. So I guess, from that story, that's where we are today with all of like that prog genty
Dude,
kind of
that's
stuff.
wonderful. That's really awesome. My intro to prog was through Pliny. When I was like a total 80s 90s. Like I
Yeah.
started off with blues, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, if you want to listen to modern artists, you should check out Pliny." And I listened to Electric Sunrise, and it changed everything.
Yeah, actually, I should mention Pliny as well. I remember like I don't remember how I came across Pliny exactly, to be honest, but I really like Pliny, and I really liked Pliny when I first started listening to him. I think I started listening to um it might have been just as or just before the Kind EP came out in 2019.
I see. I see.
And to this day, the Kind EP is like my favorite. I think it's just a nostalgia thing, but like, this like Kind and Sunhead and Flaneur and all that, Salt and Charcoal, like those songs for me was like the soundtrack to my life of like 2019, 2020. And that way of playing, and then like going from like the more metalcore stuff to like slipping into like the more
Clean
proggy
ambient.
yeah, that's my appreciation for that came through Pliny for sure, and Intervals and C2A and all that stuff.
Nice. Now, see
Yeah,
was on the podcast
yeah, I've
right
seen
before
clips.
you.
Yeah,
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 that's awesome. Um, I and you went you graduated as an IT guy, right? So
yeah.
how was that like?
So I started like fresh out of high school, first year, straight after, like no gap year. I just went straight into university, like all my friends did. You know what I mean? And I think like because that's just what we get told to do. You know what I mean? Like you go to uni and you get a degree, and looking back now, I think it's pretty crazy, like how some people obviously like are very set and like want to do stuff, but like I couldn't tell you a single person that I know very well personally who like had like a vision of what I wanted to do from the age of like 16. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's a very big burden to like put on a teenager, of like, okay, pick what you want to do for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I mean, I totally get what you mean,
yeah.
dude. Yeah.
So I did IT because I have like relatives who work in IT, and I've always had fascination with computers and stuff like that. Excuse me. But I started doing that degree, and at the same time I started doing YouTube stuff, just for the sake of doing it. I don't know, like I got into like home recording when I was like 16, and by the time I was 18 and like in the first year of uni, I must have thought I was decent enough to like put a YouTube video out. Although when I go back now, I just wish I never did. Like in terms of like, it's just not this, it's not right in terms of like the videos quality and everything like that. But that is the beauty of hindsight. And I guess like that was the product of what was happening at the time. So both of these things were happening at the same time, where I had like this music YouTube thing that was for some reason just like getting views and getting traction. And then I had this IT thing that I was doing as well. And 2 years into my degree, I actually made the decision to like pull out a subject or two, just so I could have more time to focus on music stuff and
Music.
YouTube, because I thought, well, like, I can't believe I'm in this position. Like, I might as well just try and like do it to the best of my ability, and try and like make videos that people want to watch, and, see just what happens and where it goes. So uni took a little bit of a back seat, but I didn't want to like completely just like not go back and not do uni, because I was already 2 years deep into my degree, in a 3-year degree. So instead of taking 3 years, I dropped a couple of subjects and just spread them out over another 2. So I ended up doing it in 4 years. But by the time the 4 years was done, you know, the YouTube and everything music related was kind of at this point where I could try my best to like make it a full-time thing, and really try and like just make music the one thing, which I feel like it's like every person that I say that to now, it feels like has always just been like, yeah, you should 100% just go for it. Do you know what I mean? So I thought I'd be stupid not to at least try. So yes, I have an IT degree. It's sitting there. It's in the other room, like the plaque and everything. But like I've never actually had to use it, and fingers crossed that I won't have to for a little while. But I guess it is there, and the mindset at that point again was like more of having it as like I didn't want to quit it entirely. Like I'll complete it and have it as like a fail safe, just in case like something doesn't end up working out the way that I want it to in time, and I have that as like a certification that I can fall back on, and like get work in or whatever and keep living life.
That's smart. That's, I mean, if you can, you should.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
But yeah,
totally.
the actual degree and doing it, I hated it. I could not stand it. I just, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of coding. I
I
think
get you, dude.
yeah,
I get you. Yeah.
I
I mean,
you get it. You know what I'm
yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
And what you said about having, for a 16-year-old kid to bear the burden of what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I mean, I was a victim to that mentality, because I made the decision to be, hey, I'm going to be like a tech guy because I love coding and stuff. And the more I did it, the more confused I got, and the more avenues opened up, and the more things went in many directions. And now
Yeah.
at this point in life, I have zero idea what I wanted,
Yeah.
what I am gonna do. But that doesn't stop me from not doing what I currently have. And so yeah, I totally get what you mean. And one thing that is really fascinating, that over the course of the last few years, you have had a trilogy of some sort, which is the Heart Trilogy. So Pulse, Arrhythmia, and now Arrest. So can you walk me through the ideology behind it? And also the music video for Arrest was quite awesome. And I'm very curious about, like, there was a blue and a red contrast. So what does that signify? Please tell
Yeah,
me
for
about that.
sure, for sure. So I guess like the cardiac theme trilogy came from a place of wanting to like try something new and have some sort of like symbolism of the music itself, because especially being well, not Arrest, but like everything else is instrumental, which I love. I have a big soft spot for instrumental music, like Intervals and Plenty and C2A and all that stuff. Dave Maximichich as well, but um having some sort of like emotional foundation to the music and some sort of like motive to it, rather than it just being like, oh, here's a riff that I wrote a year and a half ago that now is in a song and you can listen to it. Like to me, like it doesn't sound that serious in that way. And it kind of just sounds like music being created for the sake of music, which I try. Like obviously there's a time and place, like if I'm doing it for like a YouTube demo or whatever, and it's a quick 30-40 second demo song, then sure. But sometimes, as much of a quantitative person as I think I am, I like to step into that more qualitative aspect where it's like, okay, I want to be inspired by something else, something that's not just the fact that I wrote this riff and I need to make a song with it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
having something as simple as just the idea of a trilogy of singles where they all sound different, and all of their song names reference the song itself in many ways, like with Pulse being like probably the most jumpy kind of pulsy song out of all of them, and then Arrhythmia with like the very choppy changey rhythms and stuff like that, and then Arrest, which is essentially just dying and passing away, and having that be like the heaviest song ever and the only song with vocals ever, as in out of those three. And yeah, only the song with only vocals is in double drop D. There's like weird scratchy sounds that are meant to mimic like flatline, in a hospital bed or whatever. It's like just the idea of saying to myself like, oh, okay, this is going to be a trilogy based on like a cardiac theme, it puts me in that headspace of being able to create music that is related to that, and at least in a selfish way to me makes it feel like I'm actually doing something more than just like writing a song for the sake of writing a song. It actually has a bit of a
Right.
personal connection to it, and an intention, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that comes from, I suppose. And it was the same thing with Gradient, with having like the black, white, and gray, where black is the heavy one, white is like the catchy one, and then gray is like the marriage between both. Like just me coming up with that concept or whatever before I started writing put me in a place to write things that were akin to that. Do you know what I mean? So it's all a bit weird for me in that way, but that's part of my process that I like doing, and I think I'll just continue to do it because I think I get more interesting results. Because that's a question I get a lot from students and stuff like that. It's like, oh, how do I just like come up with stuff? And everything I've been saying about this is kind of like me just putting myself in little boxes, and that's my suggestion. It's like, oh, just like put yourself in little boxes and force yourself to do something until something interesting comes out. You know what I mean? Like with the rest, it's like, okay, it's going to be the heaviest one. It's going to have vocals. It's not going to be as riffy, and it's going to be in double drop D. And then whatever came out was whatever the song ended up being. Do you know what I mean? But I only got to
Yeah.
that point because I told myself I was going to like, you know, adhere to those boundaries. Because if I just said, oh, it can be anything, and I just picked up my guitar and just hoped that something would come out of it, then nothing would ever get done. That's just me personally.
No, I totally side with that, because one misconception with prog is that people think, oh, you can do whatever you want, but it still has to make sense. It still has to sound like a song. It still has to flow. So having that sort of concept really helps. And by having, like, for example, the Gradient EP, white color is a bright color, and you associate certain emotions and themes, and it helps
Yeah,
you make songwriting decisions that serve that purpose. And it's not something like, hey, these are some riffs and just I'll throw. Because interesting thing, the song Within that you reviewed, in the first chorus there's a break, and in the second chorus there's no break. So it signifies that whenever you take a step towards growth, the first time you always hesitate, and
yeah,
it's only after breaking that is when you get your streamline. So I totally get what you mean by that.
100%. And like you telling me that now, like I probably didn't realize that in the moment, but now that you're telling me, I think it's like that's a very cool like way of songwriting. Do you know what I mean? And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say as well. Like this is all very selfish. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just my
Yes.
justification to myself. But for me, that's all I really want at the end of the day. Like
Yeah,
if other people like it, then sure. Do you know what I mean? But
absolutely.
I'm not trying to make music for the sake of making it so that it's like a commodity, and it's like, you know, it's meant to be consumed and whatever. Like it's in a more like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like in that kind of way, not in that way, but more so in like a artistic kind of way, if that makes sense.
Totally,
Which is
totally.
again, I think in my case anyway, I struggle to do it with instrumental music for sure, because it's instrumental. You know what I mean? There's if like 99% of music has vocals in it. Do you know what I mean? So like, and you know what people associate with like music always has vocals in it. So it's harder to kind of like bring those emotions forth. But in regards to like the music video, so the music video for Arrest was done by Nevin at Dead End Visuals. Nevin plays bass in a band called Heartline. They're really, really cool. But he does this stuff as well, and he's very, very good at it. So I hit him up, and because I saw some of his previous work, and I was like, hey, like I have this song. This is what it sounds like. It's got vocals on it. It's got Marcus from Event Animate. Like, I love this style of video that you did. Can you, like, what are you thinking? And we came up with this idea for the video, and it's kind of like reflected in the song's lyrics as well, where it's basically a person who's stuck in limbo and acknowledging like the worst version of themselves, and they just want to be better. And no matter how much better they get, there's always still like they're still tied by the same pulse, right? So it's all kind of like coming back, and the motif throughout the three songs is very much represented in the fact that this person, no matter how much they want to be better, they are still tied down. Which when those two worlds collide of the good and the bad, they kind of mesh together to signify that, you know, you can be good, you can be bad, but they both can coexist at the same time. And there's no way that you can get around that. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be that way. You can't just like undo every bad action that you've ever made in your life. You have to learn to live with it and learn to accept yourself and accept your mistakes and your shortcomings, and try to make these two existences work together.
That's a really interesting concept. I wouldn't have like guessed that that was the consensus behind it, but that's really awesome because, like you mentioned, uh, at the end of the day, those two sides are still a part of you, and in order for it to truly represent, you have to acknowledge the bad as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And working with Marcus, I feel like it to some extent, watching your journey, like in the last 2 years, I think your idols have become your peers, and that's what even Connor was talking about, that when we do what we do best, there comes a point where our idols become our peers, and it changes the way we approach things. And even so, I just want to take your opinions on how, like your approach to, like talking to people firstly, second, approaching music business has evolved as soon as, like, your idols became your peers.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting topic, because it is true. Um, in my case, where it seems like I'm 1 year I was like looking up to these people, and now I'm like sitting in the same room as them, and it's very surreal for me still to this day. And I definitely don't take it for granted. For example, like Marcus, especially, like I'm such a big Invent Animate fan. Um, they were my top artist this year. Sleepless Death Ed was my top song still.
Nice.
Um, and I think a lot of that came from me like listening to it just to study his vocal patterns and stuff a little bit. So when I presented it to him, it all made sense. But yeah, like for me, the main thing regarding that stuff, because I have like found myself in many situations where, again, like a week ago, I was like watching a video of them on YouTube, and then I'm, having breakfast with them or something. So one thing that I always try my best not to do is to not be a punisher and not try and get like overexcited or anything, because I like that's a term that a lot of people reference in like the music industry, and that's the last thing that I ever want to be. Um, I think it's very important to remember that no matter how much you idolize someone, no matter how much you put them on a pedestal, whether it's in music, whether it's in TV, whether it's in whatever space it is, that they at the end of the day are a real person. Do you know what I mean? And they have real emotions and real feelings. And yes, they do get uncomfortable, they do get excited. You might see versions of them that you don't see in this kind of parasocial relationship of watching someone on a video every week for the past couple of years or whatever, right? And it's important for me to kind of ground myself in that way of thinking whenever I do go to meet people, or whenever I know that I'm going to be in these situations, because I don't want to be that person where they get like, oh man, like that guy was really annoying. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
because like it's a very weird dynamic, because like, say for example, like the other month I was touring around for a festival called Monolith in Australia, and there was a lot of bands on that
Nice.
festival, like Periphery and Leprous and
Leprous, yeah.
Intervals and all that stuff, where obviously like I'm a massive fan and I'm very inspired by them. And the weird part is that they know that going into it and meeting me as well, because they've probably like, it's just the way of the internet, like they'll comment on things and they'll see things and they'll do all that stuff. So it's not like they had no idea going into it. So is like, not that it was ever said or anything, and now we can all laugh about it. But it was probably this weird thing of like, I know this guy from the internet and he always comments on our stuff, and then it's like, yeah, I think like he really likes us. And then there's me, and I was like, okay, like I know that they know, so now I need to like play my cool and like not be
That's what
too,
I'm doing right now, bro.
yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
So it's just a very weird dynamic, but it is wholesome in a way, because at the end of the day, it's all stemmed from people just being inspired by one another and looking up to one another. And guys like the Periphery guys, especially, like doing the workshops with them, and just random stuff like sharing shuttle buses, going to the venue and having breakfast, and like, you know, just chilling in green rooms and all that stuff. Like it's a very nice and very cool experience to be, you know, there with them. And, you know, especially intervals as well. Like I love intervals. Like I'm a massive intervals guy. And, you know, me and Aaron are like friends. Me and Jacob are really close as well now. So like it's, it gets to a point where they are, you know, your inspirations, but they are also your close
Your
friends. And
friends.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it gets to that point, like funny tangent on that. So like we did a show with intervals as part of that whole run. Say we as in my band and we supported them in Melbourne. So we had to travel for that. And that was like one of the first shows where, because, you know, obviously like supporting intervals is like, oh my God, we're supporting intervals. Do you know what I mean? But it didn't feel that way until after we'd already done it, because in the moment we were all kind of just buddies and cracking jokes,
Yeah.
and we'd rock up to the venue during sound check, and like everyone was on the same page, and there wasn't this weird kind of social dynamic where it's like, oh, like I know you and you know me and you know that I really like you, and like, do you know what I mean? Like that wasn't part of it at all. It was just buddies coming together to have a show and have a good time. And the way that that affected the show was like very positive. I think like it made us play better, it made us chill out, made me chill out for sure, because I get very like stressed before a show.
Yeah, I know. Sam told me once that he was like, "Oh, Kian came backstage and said he made one mistake," and he was, "Oh my God, I did one mistake on show." So I know that you have that, but that also is a sign that you are a professional and you take things seriously, and that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, like, I don't try to beat myself up too much on like little mistakes. People often ask me, like, what's the, like, what are you scared of the most when you play live? Like, what's the scariest thing? And my answer is always like, it's never got to do anything with like actually playing the songs. It's more so to do with something that's like out of my control or out of anyone in the band's control. Like imagine like, you know, God forbid if like tracks die or my quad cortex like stops changing patches for whatever reason, and
Yeah,
like, or my cable just completely just cuts out or something like that, where it's like a technical fault or something that would just completely ruin the flow of the show. That's what I worry about, and that's what I stress about still to this day at every show. So if I make a little mistake on stage, like that's the least of my worries. That's the way that I see it, to be honest.
yeah, man. And also, I'm very curious because you have been supporting, like, many big bands that come to Australia. And so, what are certain things that people don't really get about being a support act or being, because at least from my perspective, there I have been a few cases where people think that being a support act means all being on par with the headliner, but I know that's not true. So, how do you approach a gig from a support act? Like, do you think differently, like, in retrospect to when you are headlining?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess like headlining a show in regards to like music business, especially the way it works in Australia, the way that I kind of view it is that you get these support gigs to play in front of new audiences to build up your fan base. And then when you do a headliner, that's essentially you like cashing in, for the lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Like that's where you get to put on your best show with the best production, with the best set list, and you get to reel in all of those people that saw you play for whoever XYZ before, and you can then solidify them as like fans. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that way, like we have a headline show coming up at the end of this month on the 29th
29th.
yeah,
Yeah.
in Adelaide, which is my hometown, which we haven't done in over 2 years, which is like, you know, before Arrhythmia came out. It was before we toured with Animals as Leaders on our first tour. So like there's a lot of things that have happened between now and then. And now we're hoping that, you know, this is the show where all of those past experiences and all those people that we played in front of will then come out again and see us, and the fan base will just continually grow and grow and grow. And the way that you approach the show is completely different. Like for a support set, I would never get like a stand up like guitar stand with an acoustic, and like I would never get like these 2 meter tall scaffolding with lights. But these are all the things that we're going to be getting for this show, because it's a headline set, and we can do that, and we can most importantly afford to do that, because it's a headline show, and we get majority of the financial proceedings from the show. But with a support set, it's very different. It's very much viewed as like an opportunity where you're probably not going to be making any money, if like at all. You'll probably be going in the red, and you should be using it as, or viewing it as, an opportunity to play in front of a new audience, who will then, it's up to you to put on a show that they'll remember, that they'll enjoy, so that they can come to these headline shows later, or these bigger shows later. So with that stuff, like, for example, like Animals as Leaders was the first tour that we did, which was insane. And I still pinch myself thinking about it to this day. And now that I look back on what we did then, like if I could do it again, of course I would do it completely differently, because that was our first time traveling for shows. You know what I mean? That was we hadn't even played more than 5 shows at that point, and we were just being put on tour with Animals as Leaders, and in front of an Animals as Leaders crowd as well, which is another thing. So we were very focused on like putting a very short, memorable set list for that show to leave an impression. And if there was anyone doubting, because I'm sure there was, and I had like heard sentiments around where I was like, like, who's this YouTube guy? Why is he getting the gig? Do you know what I mean? And I wanted to like use that as an opportunity to prove people wrong in a way. To where it's like, oh no, it's like, it's not just a YouTube guy. Like, this is like a full band with full production, and there's a full set list, and it's very thought out, and it's very methodical, and it's just like any other band that you would see, that you would expect a certain level of quality from. And through tours like that, and runs with Caligula's Horse and I Built the Sky and Omnific, and like all these bands where they're very much within the same kind of niche that we are, which is the most important thing. It's the prime opportunity to play in front of a bunch of new people, and to again like capture them, so that when it gets to an opportunity where you can play in a headline show, whether it's in your city or another city, you use that as like the leverage to build your fan base in a way.
I see what you mean. Yes,
Yeah.
having it in the same niche and stuff. Dude, that's really interesting. That's a great perspective to have. And I just like want to gauge, because you are not tied to any labels and stuff. So, do you think most of the opportunities for touring that come your way is through the leverage you have gained through social media?
It's interesting, because I'm not entirely sure, because I am on a booking agency. I'm under Destroy All Lines, which
Oh,
Destroy All
okay.
Lines look after like, Parkway Drive and Polaris and like all these high profile bands, and they
Nice.
look after a lot of smaller bands as well. Like myself. So it's a great place to be, because a lot of the tours and a lot of the bands that come are Destroy All Line tours and booked tours and stuff like that. So we are always in the conversation amongst like promoters and stuff to be pushed as support for these bands when they come in, and when they know that they're coming in months in advance. So there is that as well. But I think there's obviously a little bit of an aspect of like, it's a weird, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a weird situation to be in, because if I Built the Sky decides to do a tour, like me and Ro know each other from the internet prior, and if we got presented as a support, there would be an argument that could be made where it would suggest that he would be more likely to say yes, because he knows of me already. So I'm sure that like that is a part of it as well. But I've never had to send like an email or like approach someone myself regards to that stuff, to like getting pitched for a show or for an opening slot. It's always on someone else's shoulders to actually do that. But I think it would be unfair to assume that that wouldn't play a little bit of a part in it, if bands were to come in, if they were to act, because sometimes bands don't even see the support list. They would just be like, to their manager, just like, oh, pick whoever. Do you know what I mean? But if the bands are like really like, they want to see the supports and they want to pick one, again, it's this kind of weird spot where there is a chance that they might have probably seen me already, and they might recognize my name, or they might follow me, and we chat all the time. Do you know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. That was very much like with the Interval show. Like the Interval show, me and Aaron were talking about that at NAM in January. And when they finally came, it was kind of just like, oh, well, yeah, we talked about this already. This is going to happen. And it did, which is very cool. And I'm super grateful that, I even get to do that stuff and be in the position to do that.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. And I think you have been on the social media grind per se for like the last 6 7 years. So like based on your observations and whatever you have witnessed, where do you think it's heading, and what do you think is going to be the new meta for 2025?
That's a great question,
Cause,
honestly,
cause
dude.
I'll be honest. Every single time I see you post something funny, I know you're gonna release a song. I just know that now, because I've been analyzing the way you have approached social media too. And if you remember, like almost 2 years back, you started making those cut scenes where it's a woman talking something, and then you're like, no, and then it's that,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah,
you
just like
started
some
doing that.
stupid video. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's funny because like not to brag or whatever, but like every time I do a video like that, and I don't say this for every one of them, but like there's some times where like I'll think of an idea or like I'll do a video and then before I post, I'm like, this is 100% going to go viral, and then it does, and that I wish it wasn't the case. Um, because a lot of the time, and it's just the nature of the internet, it's just the nature of social media and being relatable and all that stuff, but it's often like the worst videos and the videos that have nothing to do with, you know, anything serious that you're doing in regards to like what would be in my case like releasing music and touring and stuff like that. It's always like the dumb stupid video, the meme video that blows up and gets the views and gets the likes. And I'm very careful to not do that too often because, you know, if I was to do that all the time, there would be like an associated
Yes.
brand or like
Yes.
expectation from me to just like constantly do funny stuff all the time. And then when it would come time to like release music or like tour or like do anything serious, like I would just post about it and like no one would care. Do you know what I mean? So like I'm very cautious with that side of stuff. But you are right in saying that when I'm about to release a song, I try and find ways to like get any trends that are happening in that moment, whether it be like a trend itself or just like a meme trend, and like try and get the new release and shape shift them together in a way that I can present as a piece of content that is funny yet related to whatever it is that I'm trying to promote. In regards to where I think social media is going in the future, honestly, I have no idea. Like it changes every day. I think I'm in this like I'm in this comfortable spot now where like I don't envision myself like quote unquote like grinding socials anymore. Like I think I'm just kind of content with where I'm at currently and the content that I'm producing currently, and you know, people like yourself who have been watching for years and all that stuff. Like I recognize that there's a lot of that demographic as well. And I think like I want to stay true to them as much as possible. And instead of just trying to chase a million memes and a million followers in 2 weeks, do you know what I mean? Like it's, for me, it's actually detrimental in the long run because again, like it'll just only have a bad effect on like your persona and the image of your brand and what you represent and the music that you're trying to create. Um, Unfortunately, like it is a necessary evil. Like there will be times where you need to kind of like give in to doing something a little bit memey. But um, if you can make the memey stuff like extremely relative to your niche, and extremely relative to like what it is that you're currently trying to promote, I think like even if like 80% of people get retained and 20% just like click follow, click like, and then never interact with you ever again, that's still a really good kind of conversion rate, I think. Um, but yeah, it's important not to
Yeah.
overdo it, I think.
I, that's true. I think personally, I think followers are not a significant metric anymore, because it's all about engagement now.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and yeah, so I think you're right about, I can't point a finger out, because like what I've seen recently is like people are starting to put text on the video, because apparently people are watching videos on mute now and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's quite weird, and I think it's so like you're bombarded with so much stuff every single day, and so much great quality stuff, that it's hard to keep up as a creator and also as somebody who consumes stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe there is some sort of like middle ground, hopefully in the future, where
What I
things
will
stand up.
say now that you've reminded me is like you are right in saying that it's literally like there's just you open your phone and there's 50 bajillion people playing a riff and the quality of the video is good, the quality of the sound is good if you choose to watch it with sound. Do you know what I mean? If you click on the video and turn the sound on. um, and I kind of like saw this happening like even like a couple years ago. Like I knew it was kind of going to get to a point where, you know, whether you have 400,000 followers or 400 followers, the quality and the barrier to entry of like, you know, coming up with a good looking video with good sound, that can rival like, you know, very highly produced like quality mixes is going to become so common that the only denominator left will just be like what it is that you're playing and what it's like, how cool the thing actually is. Like you can scroll, and I'm guilty of this as well. You can scroll and like see a million different modern metal riffs, and they all have the same camera angle, and they all have the same like video quality and the same audio amp sims and GGD plugins and all that stuff. But what we're seeing now, I think, is the resurgence of like guitar players that are doing things that are interesting. And for me, that is always the thing that is going to be the number one in terms of like, you know, getting any sort of traction on social media as a musician. When you think back to like people who are famous now for it, it's like Tosin, Misha, Tim Henson, all these guys that are pioneering the instrument in some way. You know, what's that phrase? Often imitated, never replicated.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, where it's like, yeah, from that there is like a million people that want to try to do what they do, myself included. But to some extent, there it's like no matter how much you try and reach that end goal, there will always be that person standing on the top, and they were the pioneer, and people recognize them as that. And they can do no wrong. Whenever they post, they get all the engagement in the world. They have all the followers in the world because at the end of the day, what they're doing is interesting on the instrument. And that's why you get guys like Hild Music and Baxty and all these guys who are just head and shoulders above everyone else, in
Yeah.
regards to like technical proficiency, which has not been that important lately in guitar world online, but now it's starting to come back because again, I think it's come from a place of, well, everyone sounds the same, everyone looks the same. What makes these guys different? Oh, they can shred a bajillion notes a second better than anyone else. Cool. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you gotta
and
have
they,
your USP of some sort.
yeah, they're getting the recognition they deserve for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, in order to, I think, yeah, in order to stand out, you have to have some sort of USP. Be it better songwriting, be it better looking video, like Clayton's videos and Clayton's
Exactly
music.
right. Clayton is another example where
Yeah,
like he has amazing playing, but his videos are just head and shoulders above everyone again.
everyone else.
So
Yeah,
um immediately, like you know it's a Clayton video when you watch it, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. He's
Yeah.
coming on the podcast in 12 hours.
Oh,
So,
nice. Awesome. Tell him I said hey.
yeah, I will. I will. So yeah, man, you're right about that. I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch, so I have a last question for you. It's not more of a question; it's more of a moment of reflection of everything that you have done this year, be it releasing music, be it touring, be it collaborating with big companies that you know started out, like for example, Neural DSP, the Pliny X song. So congratulations on that,
Thank
and
you.
congratulations on being a host for the periphery master classes. i
Thank you.
i can't even imagine how big of a deal it must be, because I know you have been covering songs with Joao, and
Yeah.
doing stuff that throughout the years, and now it's you're at a point where you're on par in a way that you're not being a cover guy, but
Nah,
you're making
absolutely not. Not on
on your
par. That's
own.
ridiculous.
Okay, I would like to reiterate that on par in the sense that there is less gap in terms of how far you are to them. It's like if you are a cover guy, obviously they're gonna have the high ground, but you're not a cover guy anymore, and you're writing your own music and you're taking pride in it. And it's really and I really like that, because that's how I want to become, and that's what I'm striving towards. And watching your journey throughout the years has been awesome. So I just want to know that you are one of the first guys, I think, in my opinion, that went from being the modern internet bedroom guy that's taking it on tour. So what do you think that stops people from doing that? Like
Um,
mindset wise, anything.
that's a great question. I think what gets people scared the most is like just like seeing the benchmark of what other people have done and then thinking that you need to do that immediately. And if you don't, then it's just like not even worth doing kind of thing. In terms of like whether that be songwriting or production or like how good your live set sounds and all that stuff. And you know, I when I started doing all that stuff, I wanted it to be the best that it could be. Um so that it would stand out and you know again kind of like not be that typical thing of like, oh, like this YouTube guy who just plays live now. It's like, no, like this is like a full thing. Like this is like a full production. There's a lot of time that goes into this. And I'm following in the footsteps of a lot of the people that, paved the way for this kind of stuff. So I think people get worried um, at not doing it to the best of their ability or what they perceive as like the best thing when getting started, when in reality is it's like you do it and then a year later you just want to redo everything of what you did because there's a certain thing there's certain things where you don't know until you do it, and then when you do it you will get better at doing it over time and you will learn how to get better at doing it over time, especially in the live world. Like I'm still learning every day. There's still things that we can do in our set, in like the way that we function, in how everything is like produced and programmed for a live show. Like we're still learning, things are still happening. But again, like if we never made the leap to do it in the first place, we'd still be wondering what all those things are, or we'd be ignorant to what those things are because we never did it in the first place. Do you know what I mean? I think what gets people scared the most is that first initial step and just doing it for the first time, because you will learn. Like there'll be things where it will be out of your control and you will need to think on the fly of how to fix things and how to do things and how to change things. But again, it will never get to that unless you just do it. You know what I mean? That's about as clear cut as I can make it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm actually writing an EP which is called Momentum is Everything, because that's what I learned this year, that you put one step on top of the other
Yeah.
and before you know it you're somewhere else. And one of the song in the EP is called Life Rewards Action, and I think that's what
Nice.
you just described.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it'd be like you with the podcast, right? There was probably a situation where you're like, oh, like I want to start a podcast, but I don't know I don't know how to do it properly. And then probably one day you're just like, fuck it, I'm going to start a podcast. And then you did it. And then after the first and the second and the third and the fourth, you just got better and better and better and better at doing it. And now we've moved to Riverside and like all these things where like it gets better and you learn as you do it. And it's very much the same in songwriting, in production, in recording yourself, in doing live shows. Like, I think a lot of people will just open Instagram, see someone doing it to like the extent that they want to do it at, and then just be like, I don't even know where to start. And then just like get scared and not do it. But you have to start doing it. Otherwise it's like playing Elden Ring for the first time. You know what I mean? Like it's exactly what it's like. It's like, I remember when the first time I played Elden Ring, I got my ass kicked. And then by the end of the first week, I was just like it was
Cruising.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah, bro, that's lovely. Um, and as my final question, a two-part question. First is, what's next for you in 2025, and do you have any parting words
So what's next for me in 2025?
apart
I
from the
will,
Corner EP,
yeah,
collab
right.
EP with Corner?
Right. I guess I got to talk about that a little bit, but I'll be at NAM in January, which is next month, but it is 2025. I'll be at NAM, um, playing at the bare knuckle booth and you know showcasing some of their pickups, which I use in every single one of my guitars. I'll also be doing a masterclass at Musicians Institute in Hollywood, which I'm very
Nice.
excited about. Yeah, that's going to be cool. That's not public knowledge yet, but I think by the time this comes out, it'll be announced, so it's fine. Even if it isn't, it doesn't matter. It's all good. So there's that, and then I'll also be doing more stuff with Jackson for some very cool new line of guitars that they got coming out that I can't say too much more about, but it's something that people have been asking for a very long time, and I'm super excited to be doing the videos for that as well. So that'll be cool. And then I'll be heading over to the UK to do stuff with Connor for that EP. The EP that we've had on the back burner for a little while. We really want to release it, but there's just like a couple of things we need to tweak first, and videos that we want to shoot and stuff like that with people that we can't name for now, who are very excited to like do stuff with. So there's that, and then as far as that, like that'll be probably leading up into the second half of the new year, and up until that point, and after that point I have no idea, but I'm
Who
sure something
knows?
will
Yeah.
pop up. That's the beauty
Yeah,
of
that's the
music, like
way.
something will just pop up immediately, and you have to be super on it. But words of wisdom. Let me think.
Okay, so I think one of my friends told me that Hushman in Persian means a wise man.
Does
So
it? I didn't know that,
yeah,
so you're teaching me.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So it does mean that. So as a parting note, do you have anything to say to anyone who's
um
watching this?
I think if anyone is watching this and you want to start doing guitar and you want to start recording yourself and you want to start, playing with plugins and learning how to record and learning how to make music and making a band and making YouTube videos and doing any of that stuff that, you might have seen me or other people similar to me, such as Connor or Clayton or any of the other people that we've been talking about, and you want to try do that stuff yourself and you're getting a bit overwhelmed, like my best piece of advice is to just start. And then once you start, everything will fall into place. Trust me.